Today we'll be speaking with Amy Lampert, founder of WomensWorth.
But I think what I don't see often enough is couples talking about money and how they make decisions. And if you've been married for a long time and you've done a certain dance around money or any issue, and then you decide to change that dance, one of you or the other is going to be out of lockstep. That can, cause ripples. So I think talking about, we do a workshop actually on how to talk about money.
My name is Hindell Grossman, and I'm a divorce attorney with offices in Newton and Nantucket. Welcome to my podcast. Today we're welcoming Amy Lampert, who has over 25 years of experience in the wealth management industry. We're going to talk about money. In 1998, Amy founded the not-for-profit Women's Financial Network and continues today as the founding principal of WomensWorth, a company whose mission is to demystify the world of money and increase financial literacy among women and youth. She is a financial advisor currently at the Bullfinch Group located in Needham, and she facilitates workshops for men and women who anticipate divorce. Amy has written frequently as a consumer advocate for individual investors and was the author of a blog dedicated to her findings while mystery shopping in the offices of banks and brokerage offices. She has designed and delivered numerous financial literacy workshops for companies in the financial services industry, as well as at WomensWorth. She is an arbitrator for the Financial Industries Regulatory Authority, a dispute resolution division, and is president of the New England chapter of the Life Planning Network. She has been recognized as a 5-star wealth manager in Boston Magazine for the last 4 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Amy, let's talk about money today. Tell us first about WomensWorth and why you thought that was important.
I started it's not like talking about my child, so I don't know how long we have, but I could go on forever. I started WomensWorth when I left my employ on Wall Street, and I did it because I realized that women thought very differently about money than men do. The majority of advisors were and still are men. And the majority of clients were mostly men. And so I felt as though women were very underserved. I should also say that you teach what you most have to learn. And I, as a woman, despite being employed by Wall Street for over 25 years, really felt that the type of information and advice I was looking for didn't exist.
What kind of information was that?
Well, I think women think more holistically, more comprehensively. I like to say that there was a very sort of male speak vocabulary on Wall Street. Things like making a killing in the market, banking on the market, bailing you out, being the answer to all of your financial needs. And I think I left, by the way, coincident with my becoming a mother, and
you left Wall Street.
I left Wall Street about the same time, shortly after I became a parent, and my concern was security, and the nowhere in the business models in which I worked and which I observed was security as an issue addressed.
So you left Wall Street for security purposes. You didn't have enough security on Wall Street.
I had a lot of financial security on Wall Street. The culture of Wall Street was not conducive to my life as a single mother.
So it's a lifestyle too.
Completely lifestyle. It certainly wasn't a wise financial choice if you were looking at just the monetary concerns. People told me I had more guts than brains, but what you don't do for your child, right?
Well, we all have to make lifestyle decisions that suit us.
It turned out to be the best decision I ever made.
Good. I'm glad it worked out well. So WomensWorth was designed to help women. You became the kind of the translator for financial issues for women, so that you could inform women in a different language. Is that fair?
I think that's a great. I would never have articulated it that way, but that's a great way of putting it. Yeah, there was a different jargon, different vocabulary. We talked about a lot in talking to women. What I found out is that their concerns were not so much making a killing in the market, not transacting business, but what happens if my husband dies and he's the primary breadwinner? What happens to my kids if I'm the primary breadwinner and I can't work anymore? What happens if I get sick? How do I make sure my kids go to college? All of those concerns that can't always and only be answered by having the right asset allocation.
So I know you represent men too, so I don't want to
Mhm.
make this conversation exclusively about women, but do you think in general women's goals are different than men's goals? It's not accumulation as much. It's
No, I think I think women love to accumulate wealth and to build wealth and preserve wealth, and they also have concerns about their family and security. I don't think it's an either or, but I think that more men are either seduced by or convinced that the transactions involved in investing will answer all those questions.
So how did you start teaching women about your philosophies about money?
So the Women's Financial Institute was literally a group of women who came together on topics of interest, and we held workshops, and it sort of snowballed.
Ah.
And it evolved into people who attended the workshops wanted me to be their advisor. So that's when I started WomensWorth, which was a for-profit company, and I was a registered investment advisor in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And even though my background was in investments, my practice took on much more of a financial planning strategy.
Uh-huh. So how does WomensWorth help women now?
Well, WomensWorth helps its clients, which, by the way, are not all women. We like to bill ourselves as we help women and the important people in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So we often work, most frequently work with couples.
Okay.
And we help them by going through a comprehensive financial planning process.
What's involved?
Well, let me give you a frame of reference. When you go to a traditional financial advisor that works at one of the big financial services firms, generally they help you with your investments. Most people have their life savings in their retirement plans, and they get help with how to manage that money. That is one piece of a six-piece pie, which constitutes the six-legged stool of financial planning. The other five pieces are your cash flow and balance sheet health, risk and protection planning, tax planning, retirement planning, estate and legacy planning, and all of those things together constitute a good financial plan. Most financial plans deal with each of these slices independently. My approach and the approach of the people at my firm integrate each of those pieces so that a decision in one silo is stress tested against the decisions in each of the other silos. So it's comprehensive. Some people say holistic. It's integrative financial planning.
So all six pieces, or all six legs of the stool,
are thoroughly, deeply, and comprehensively analyzed.
With respect to each other.
With respect to each other. And all against the background of somebody's life and aspirations and where they are in their work life cycle and what they want to do for work. Are they ready to stop working?
Mm-hmm.
Do they want to reinvent themselves? It's always against the background of one's
circumstances.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of circumstances, let's talk about divorcing circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have clients who are divorcing?
Yeah, somehow I have become a magnet for
Sorry
for lots of people. I work with a lot of people who are getting divorced, and then they send all their friends. So it seems to be somewhat of an epidemic, although I'm sure that I see an unfair share. I see a lot of people who really, really feel as though they want to extricate themselves from their marriages, but don't know how mostly because of the financial consequences.
Because they're nervous.
Well, they're nervous, and the financial situations are, complex.
Uh-huh.
I've seen in the last month, I've seen 3 women, all of whose husbands are on the verge of or who are planning to declare bankruptcy, and it took all 3 women completely by surprise.
So they've come to you recently because their husbands have notified them that they're financially unstable or insecure, and the husbands have said, we may need to file bankruptcy, and the wives are panicked. And they've come to you.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're going to try doing your best to make them feel a little more comfortable, I imagine, but under difficult financial circumstances.
Well, what I try to advise people, men and women, is if you think that you may have to dissolve your marriage, it's a really good idea to put your financial ducks in a row. You know, this is part of your question earlier about what we do with people at WomensWorth. It's sad, but it is true, certainly of women of our generation, and even unfortunately in the millennial generation, that women or men, but one or the other of a couple either delegates or abdicates the work of money management. And so when something goes awry, they're surprised because they didn't really delegate, they abdicated, right? When you delegate something, you check in to make sure it's being done well, and that's okay. But when you abdicate, it's people don't want to be bothered, or they feel overwhelmed or intimidated, or they feel that they don't know the answers. And part of that's, I think, a problem that Wall Street has created, which is they keep the consumer in a one-down position so that they have all the answers.
Well, this division of labor issue is something I think about a lot, because I see that when people come in for divorce, is that sometimes I'm representing the spouse that knows nothing about the finances.
Right.
And I understand there's often, very often, almost all the time, a division of labor between spouses, and one knows about the finances and the other one doesn't. And the one who knows about the finances is the one who's making the investment decisions and knows where the accounts are, knows where money's being moved, knows how it's being spent. And they have the power in having that information, but they also have the blame if things go wrong.
Yes, and just because somebody put their hand up to be the person who takes that on doesn't mean they were necessarily good at it.
Right, they don't necessarily have any training.
So if I had one message to any of our listeners, men or women, is if you are in a partnership where you are inclined to delegate the management of your financial destinies, don't delegate it unless you get a report from the person to whom you delegate it on a periodic basis, just the way a manager would if they delegated something. And certainly don't abdicate it. It will most certainly come back to bite you, even if your marriage stayed intact. But at the time of becoming a widow or a widower, or an illness, or at a time in your life when you definitely don't want to have to be learning this stuff for the first time, you should be involved. What we like to say at WomensWorth is we help people become masters of their own financial destinies.
That's a great message. A really great message. And, as we said, the people who are managing the household finances don't necessarily have any expertise at that. So both parties go down the tubes, like in this bankruptcy situation you mentioned, or the 3 bankruptcies clients that have come in recently. So what do you think about if someone's going to delegate, that they delegate responsibility for the financial management to a financial planner?
I don't think you should ever. I think so. There are do-it-yourselfers that do everything by themselves, whether within a couple or one or the other of them. There are delegators, and then there's hybrids, where you do some stuff yourself and you delegate others. For example, in a household, believe it or not, women most often deal with the budget, but not with the investments. So that may feel like a division of labor, but it really isn't. They're 2 discrete tasks.
When you said budget, you mean actually creating a budget and monitoring spending, or just mean paying the household bill?
Paying bills, doing the bookkeeping, but not building wealth. When I think about money management and wealth management, I really do think about building and preserving wealth. Saving is a huge piece of that. The thing I would say to anybody is to be involved, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with your financial planner or advisor. If you don't take, and you don't have to be, there's no high math, there's no formulaic algorithms. You just need to add and subtract, multiply and divide, but you have to take some time to understand. You have to ask good questions. If you have not gotten comprehensible answers to the questions that you ask, then it is not your fault. It is the fault of the person answering your questions.
But they haven't made themselves clear.
You can't sit there and say, oh, I'll never understand this stuff. Oh, this stuff is too hard. No, it's not too hard. You deserve and should demand somebody who explains everything to you so that you can, we require our clients to recite back to us the reasons for every decision that they've made with our help.
Yeah. So you and Bullfinch are very consumer oriented.
Completely.
So you want to make sure everyone understands what decisions they're making.
Yep.
Interesting. So you've represented quite a few people who are getting divorced, and you've had clients who are thinking about getting divorced. What issues have you seen you think that people should know about and should think about, financial issues, when they're getting divorced that sometimes get overlooked or are very important?
Well, first, the getting the ducks in a row. You want to make sure you look at your credit, both individually and as a couple. Some, believe it or not, there are still, it's hard to believe this, but there are still some members of couples that don't have their own credit in their own name, and that's really important. It's hard to do that once you get divorced if you haven't had credit in your own name.
All right, so let me stop you. When you mean look at your credit, do you mean get credit reports?
Yes.
Okay.
Get credit reports. Look at the balances in all of your short-term credit accounts, credit card accounts. How much debt does your family have? Because that debt may not be known to you, and you need to know that. And you need to know that when you're married, much less when you're thinking about dissolving your marriage, but it becomes really important if you're thinking about dissolving a marriage.
And harder to get that information.
And very hard to get that information. I think everybody should be looking at monthly statements or quarterly statements on a regular basis. If they're your assets, or if they're your assets or assets that may be considered in a divorce, then you should know about them. And it's really hard to get those statements after you've separated. I think people, I guess the one word of warning I give people, because this is the age of mediation, and there's some really good things about mediation, but I have to say that in the vast majority of cases, people start out with the best of intentions. They go to a mediator, and either one of them is so clueless that they agree to everything, and unfortunately that's often the woman, or it blows up and they can't mediate and they end up having to have advocacy anyway. I do really believe that each person entering into a divorce should have their own advocate. Even if they mediate the bulk of the agreement, they do need their own advocate eventually, as you know.
And by advocate, you mean a divorce attorney?
I do.
Okay.
I do. You may have heard of this. There's been the advent of the collaborative law model.
I've heard about that. I am one, in fact.
Good. And I'm collaboratively trained as well. And you may know that the role of a neutral financial person is to be completely neutral. And I find it really difficult to be completely neutral. So it wasn't a good role for me. And I do think people who enter into the collaborative law model have to be aware that they may not be getting financial advice that's in their best interest. It's always, the splitting things, I don't mean literally down the middle, but I'm just a big believer in, if you're my client, you're going to get the best of my advice on your behalf.
I understand. So you're a financial advocate.
I am. And I hear stories. For example, I can't tell you how many times clients have come to see me who are divorced, who were married longer than 10 years, who are getting close to retirement, who don't have lots of resources, and who are unaware that they're entitled to their former spouse's Social Security benefit. They've never heard about that. It's inconceivable to me that an attorney would forget to tell a client that, but it happens all the time.
It's a big issue.
It's a huge issue.
Yeah, it's good to know. So Social Security, access to Social Security benefits is an important thing for divorcing people to know about.
It is. It's important for any spouse to know about, because even if you're a non-working spouse, there are benefits that you're eligible for, so people don't know that either. But you should understand Social Security. It's hard. It's hard to navigate. We do a lot of workshops on navigating Social Security, both for people who are divorced, widowed, and just couples.
That's
because
important.
It's really, and the rules are forever changing.
Yeah.
Let's see. So credit, make sure that you understand the value and the tax consequences of liquidating any or all of your assets, which might have to happen in a divorce. So it may feel as though two assets are equal, a $100,000 stock portfolio and a $100,000 home, and yet when each of those are liquidated, the tax consequences on each may be significantly different, and that would mean that the net after-tax value of that asset is dramatically different. Those are overlooked all the time by attorneys. I think that making sure now in the process of a divorce that if you are the recipient of child support or alimony, that future cash flow needs to be protected. So, because I see a not insignificant incidents of the person who's supposed to pay either alimony or child support somehow becoming unable to do it.
Ah.
They either become ill or depressed or who knows. Unwilling, and there needs to be some protection. If the support of your children depends on a breadwinner paying you, and something happens to that breadwinner, then you need to have money pour into your world to take care of that obligation.
How do you suggest that?
Well, life insurance is the either disability insurance to protect against a loss of income or life. And I think more and more I am seeing smart attorneys require that divorcing spouses have life insurance on each other.
Yeah, it's
that's a good
a security.
Yes,
but of course then you need a death to get the benefits of that.
That's true.
Policy.
That's true. Which is why I think disability insurance to protect income is also important.
Yeah, there are good insurance products for those kinds of events.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what else are you seeing in divorcing couples that you think is important?
I don't know how many of your listeners know what a cuadro, a qualified domestic relations order, is, but I spend more time helping the recipient of a cuadro logistically get their funds from the relinquishing spouse's account. That's a nightmare. I don't know if it's a nightmare because in some cases the attorney hasn't filed them correctly. In some cases the relinquishing firm is not anxious to give up the assets. But it's something that needs to be paid attention to. I think lawyers need to do a better job of understanding how not only getting the order, but also how to implement the order. Because in some cases, the proceeds from this order are very important for somebody, for the recipient.
The largest asset other than
Exactly.
real estate. Yeah, this cuadro, QDRO, is a qualified domestic relations order, as you said. And it's a mechanism to divide retirement assets. And it requires documentation to the institution that holds the retirement assets so that they can be divided between the two spouses. So it's a process that needs to be documented. The cuadro document needs to be approved by the institution that's sending the money to someone else, and then the judge needs to approve of this document too. So it's a multi-step process, and it's tricky because each institution seems to have their own language about how they want the cuadro drafted.
Yes, and there is an institution in the Boston area, which will remain nameless, but who charges an outrageous fee simply for the transfer of assets out of one account to another, even when the money, especially when the money isn't even going to remain at that firm.
It's a penalty for taking the money out of that institution.
But it's more than a penalty. It's usurious. The fees are ridiculous. Yeah. But anyway, yes, the way you explain it is how I wish every attorney would explain it, which is why you are probably at the top of your profession.
Oh, thank you, Amy. Appreciate that very much. All right, so we have the
other thing about
it.
Just one more thing about cuadros that I think is really interesting. So sometimes the recipients of cuadros need the assets to live on, right? So they're not going to stay in a retirement plan. So knowing the tax consequences and the net after tax, because the government must get their due, but knowing those, the details of that are also, I think, incumbent upon an attorney who is negotiating an equitable division of assets.
Yeah. It's tough when you have to start living on retirement assets sooner than you expect, right? And it happens
really
sometimes. Yep. Yeah. You talked earlier about the cash flow. You talked about balance sheet, but it seems like a lot of people in my divorce world don't have a really good understanding about how much is coming in and going out of a household. Is that what you meant when you talked about balance sheet?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think that that's unique to divorcing couples. I would tell you that the majority of people who come to us for planning really don't have a sense of what comes in and what goes out. And the single biggest lever in building wealth is your rate of savings. And people, I'm sure you've seen this, if not experienced it. I certainly did in my early years. Your expenses expand to accommodate your increase in income, right?
You mean you spend more?
You make more money.
You spend more.
You make more money, and you think, great, I'm going to go spend it all because I have this, this extra margin. Instead of thinking, I'm going to spend a little more and I'm going to save some more, and it's not the market that makes 1 or 2 or 3% more in rate of return. Doesn't have anywhere near as much leverage as the savings rate throughout your working life.
What do you suggest to clients about how much to save in a percentage-wise?
Yeah, so there's a rule around that. So if you're in your 20s, 12 to 15% of your adjusted gross. If you didn't do it in your 20s and you do it in your 30s, you're looking at 15 to 20 of your adjusted gross. If you didn't do it in your 30s and you wait till your 40s, you're talking about higher and higher. And what typically happens is people don't think about it till it seems like when they turn 50, they start taking the choke. And, it's just much harder.
Yeah.
So you either do without later or you do without. I mean, we're not talking about really depriving oneself, but it's, not buying another, 62-inch TV just because your 57 inches isn't big enough. Or, that kind of, those decisions.
And when you talk about savings, you're talking about into retirement plans or just
all sources?
All sources.
Retirement plus other sources of savings. But savings that you don't spend. Not the little savings account that you use for travel. A savings account that's meant for wealth building. It's a wealth building account. So that the day that you decide voluntarily, or it's decided for you involuntarily that you leave the workforce, you have stability and security.
Yeah. How do you suggest people get best educated about financial management?
Come to our workshops.
Oh, really? All right. We have them regularly, don't you, at Old Finch?
We do. We have a quarterly Women's Mastery series where we talk about a lot of these sort of being master of your own destiny. And we do a lot of retirement mastery series for people who are thinking about retiring, anticipate, or in retirement.
Wonderful. So we're about to wrap up, but I want to ask you if you have any suggestions other than make sure you don't abdicate or delegate financial decisions if you're in a relationship.
We talked a lot about divorce, but let's talk about good, healthy relationships and keeping relationships healthy, because money is an issue in a lot of relationships, and whether it's money or money is a metaphor for something else, it seems like there's always a dance around money. You do see couples actually where one is a saver and one is a spender, and I think that's a good thing. But I think what I don't see often enough is couples talking about money and how they make decisions. And if you've been married for a long time and you've done a certain dance around money or any issue, and then you decide to change that dance, one of you or the other is going to be out of lockstep. That can, cause ripples. So I think talking about, we do a workshop actually on how to talk about money.
You do?
We do.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, you were actually, I think, at our last one.
I was at a workshop recently. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Thank you.
A lot of audience participation. Obviously, it's an issue everybody wants to learn about that attends. Good. So thank you for attending our podcast today. I've learned a lot myself, and I think that you've imparted a lot of really interesting inside information about finances that will be important for our listeners. Thanks, Amy.
It's been a pleasure.
If you'd like more information about the topics covered in our podcast, please contact us at Grossman & Associates. You'll find a competent and experienced team of compassionate, responsive, and innovative legal professionals. Email me at Hindell@grossmanltd.com. Thank you for listening.